Betrayal broke her heart. Justice healed her soul. The rain had been falling steadily all morning, tapping a melancholy rhythm against the bay window of the Victorian house that Eleanor called home. At 65, Eleanor had spent the last 4 decades in this house. Every creak of the floorboards and every chip in the paint held a memory of her late husband, Arthur, and the life they had built together. Since Arthur's passing 3 years ago, the house had felt larger, quieter, but it was still her sanctuary. It was the place where she felt safest, surrounded by her books, her garden, and the lingering scent of Arthur's pipe tobacco that seemed to cling to his old armchair. However, that safety was about to be shattered by the people she loved the most. Eleanor had been busy in the kitchen since dawn. Her daughter Jessica and her son-in-law Dave were coming over for lunch. It wasn't a holiday or a birthday, which made the visit unusual, but Eleanor was simply happy to see them. She had prepared Jessica's favourite pot roast and baked a cherry pie, humming a soft tune as she set the table with her best china. She ignored the nagging feeling in her gut, the intuition that mothers often have when something isn't quite right. She wanted to believe that they were coming just to see her, to break the loneliness that had settled over her life. When Jessica and Dave arrived, the atmosphere was tense from the moment they stepped through the oak front door. There were no warm hugs, only stiff, obligatory greetings. Jessica, a woman of 35 who had inherited Eleanor's eyes, but none of her patience, refused the tea Eleanor offered. Dave, a man who always seemed to be calculating the cost of everything around him, paced around the living room, tapping on the walls and inspecting the crown moulding with a critical eye. They sat down at the dining table, but the food remained untouched. Eleanor folded her hands in her lap, her heart pounding. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "You both seem distracted." Jessica exchanged a glance with Dave before clearing her throat. "Mom, we need to talk. We've been thinking about your living situation. This house is too big for you. It's old, it's drafty, and maintaining it must be a nightmare." Eleanor frowned, confused. "I manage just fine, Jessica. I have the gardener, and I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. This is my home." "That's the thing, Eleanor," Dave chimed in, leaning forward with a fake smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We think it's time you downsized. Actually, we have a better solution. Jessica and I are struggling with our apartment rent. It's like throwing money down the drain. We were thinking, what if we moved in here?" Eleanor blinked, processing the request. "Move in? Well, I suppose you could make the guest room ready." "No, Mom," Jessica interrupted sharply. "Not the guest room. We need space. Dave needs a home office and we plan on starting a family soon. We were thinking you could take the basement apartment. It has a separate entrance and it's cozy. We would take the main house." The silence that followed was deafening. The basement was a finished storage area, damp and with small windows that barely let in any light. They were asking her to vacate the home she built, the bedroom she shared with Arthur, to live like a tenant in her own cellar. "No," Eleanor said softly but firmly. "I am not moving into the basement, Jessica. This is my house. If you want to stay in the guest room for a while to save money, that is one thing, but I will not give up my home." Jessica's face flushed red. The mask of concern slipped away, revealing raw entitlement. "You are being selfish. You're one old woman in a 4-bedroom house. Do you know how much this property is worth? We could leverage this asset, start Dave's business, and secure our future, but you're just sitting on it. My home is not an asset for you to leverage, Eleanor said, her voice rising. It is my life, and I am shocked that you would even suggest displacing me. We aren't asking, we are telling you what makes sense, Dave shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The china rattled. Get out, Eleanor said, standing up. She was shaking, but she stood tall. If you only came here to take what isn't yours, then leave. Jessica stood up so abruptly that her chair tipped over. You ungrateful old hag. We are the only family you have left. You're going to die alone in this museum. In a fit of blind rage, Jessica grabbed the heavy crystal vase from the centre of the table, a vase Arthur had bought for Eleanor on their 25th anniversary, and hurled it across the room. It wasn't aimed at the wall, it was aimed at Eleanor. Eleanor tried to duck, but she wasn't fast enough. The heavy crystal struck her shoulder with a sickening thud before shattering on the floor. A sharp cry of pain escaped her lips as she clutched her arm. Blood began to seep through her blouse. Look what you made me do, Jessica screamed, not in apology but in accusation. You're crazy, you're impossible. Dave grabbed Jessica's arm. Let's go. She's not worth it right now. We'll come back when she comes to her senses. They stormed out, leaving Eleanor bleeding amidst the shards of her precious memories. The front door slammed shut, echoing through the empty house. Eleanor didn't cry. The shock had numbed her tears. She walked to the bathroom, cleaned the wound, which was deep and bruising rapidly, and bandaged it. Then she walked into the living room. She looked at the shattered vase, then up at the corner of the bookshelf. A tiny red light blinked on the hidden security camera she had installed months ago. After noticed small amounts of cash missing from her purse during Jessica's previous visits. She had recorded everything. The demand, the insults, the threat, and the assault. That night Eleanor didn't sleep. She sat in Arthur's chair and realised that the daughter she remembered, the little girl with pigtails, was gone. In her place was a stranger consumed by greed. Eleanor realised that if she didn't protect herself now, they wouldn't stop until they had taken everything, perhaps even her life. The next morning, Eleanor didn't call Jessica to apologise. She called her lawyer, Mr. Henderson. She also went to the police station with the video file on a USB drive. 3 days later, Jessica and Dave returned. They had a locksmith with them. They were planning to change the locks while they thought Eleanor was at her bridge club. They laughed as they approached the door, Dave making a joke about which room would be his gaming den. But the key didn't work. The locks had already been changed. Before they could figure out what was happening, a patrol car pulled into the driveway. 2 officers stepped out. At the same time, Eleanor opened the door. She looked different. She wasn't wearing her usual house dress. She was dressed in a sharp blazer, looking every bit the strong woman she truly was. What is going on? Jessica demanded, trying to sound authoritative but failing as the officers approached. Jessica Miller and David Miller, the officer asked. We have a restraining order against both of you filed by Mrs. Eleanor Vance. You are also being charged with assault and battery and attempted property theft. What? Mom! Tell them to stop, Jessica shrieked, looking at Eleanor. This is ridiculous. It was an accident. Eleanor stepped out onto the porch. She looked down at them, her expression calm and unreadable. It wasn't an accident, Jessica. I have the video. I have the audio. I heard you say you wanted to leverage my home. I saw you throw the vase." "Mom, please!" Jessica's voice cracked, shifting instantly to manipulation. "We're family. Don't do this. We can talk about this." "We did talk," Eleanor said coldly. "And you showed me exactly who you are. You don't want a mother. You want a bank account. You don't want a home. You want an asset." Mr. Henderson, Eleanor's lawyer, stepped out from behind her. He handed a thick envelope to the stunned couple. "This is a formal notice. You are removed from Mrs. Vance's will effectively immediately. Furthermore, the loan you took from Mrs. Vance 5 years ago is now being recalled in full, as per the contract you signed but ignored. You have 30 days to pay or we will see you in court." Dave turned pale. We can't pay that. We spent it." "Then I suggest you start selling your things instead of trying to steal mine," Eleanor said. Jessica began to cry, screaming obscenities as the police escorted them away from the property. Eleanor watched them go. She felt a phantom pain in her shoulder where the vase had hit her, but in her heart she felt a strange lightness. The heavy burden of trying to please ungrateful people had finally been lifted. Months later, the Victorian house was quiet again, but it was a peaceful quiet. Eleanor sat in the garden sipping tea. She had joined a travel club for seniors. Next week, she was flying to Italy, a trip she and Arthur had always planned but never took. She had decided to leave her estate to a charity that helped elderly people who had been victims of financial abuse. She looked at a photo of Arthur on her phone. "I did it, my love," she whispered. "I stood up for us." The wind rustled through the trees, sounding like a soft applause. Eleanor smiled, took a deep breath of the fresh air, and finally, truly, began to live for herself. She had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes you have to prune the branches of your own family tree to let the sunlight reach your soul again.